Test. See if this actually works. I don't know if the audio is going to come through my hearing aids or if it's going to... Taxis, man. If it's going to come through on my phone, but we shall see. What do you... Your... Oh. Well, we're less than a minute away from home. I've already had my first... In fact, my second road rage incident. Yeah, I just want to see if the audio works and then we'll take it from there. I'm hoping in post-editing I can somehow miraculously edit this that it hasn't got the jitter. We can only hope and pray. I don't have a stabilized gimbal. Maybe that's something I do in the future. I'd like to do more. I've been starting to do some content, mainly short form, because I think I've got a lot of knowledge and insight that I can share that is of value to people. And I do a lot of one-on-one calls and career coaching calls and help people with their resumes and LinkedIn optimization and little tips and tricks and all that good stuff. That's one-on-one, which is great. I do it for free, which I should probably change at some point. The challenge with that is most of the people that need this assistance tend to be unemployed or out of work or between work, or they haven't necessarily got the financial means to pay for something like that. So I think me being the cool guy that I am, I feel like I can't charge there. But it's cool. But by doing this, I can, before I help someone, I can first send them this and go, hey, watch this video, and if you still have questions, we can set something up. So, I'll give it to them, mahala, free, and if they still want direct support or the context of their situation is important to them, then I can set up a call with them and take it from there. Not prepared anything. I got to a point now where I just thought, you know what, I need to rip the band-aid off and just start doing this. I've self-imposed too many hurdles into making content, and I wanted to do YouTube for the longest time. I created hurdles, but the hurdles became things where I think I created problems out of nothing. I want to get a decent camera. I want to get microphones. I want to get a stabilized gimbal, good editing software, a better, I've got an iPhone 12. It's old as time, but still works like a charm. But I want to get a improved phone so the video content is good, and I'm basing all these thoughts on what I see on YouTube and what I enjoy. I like all sorts of YouTube. I watch this couple in Italy that's repairing like an old farm, and I love it. I love the calmness and the soothingness of it and the rawness. I like Just Alex. Alex Hormozy for business stuff. There's a marketing guy I follow that gives some phenomenal advice on marketing. And I think it was on an Alex Hormozy video I saw the other day, which, and I might be paraphrasing and I might not have it right, but he said he knows someone that's, I hate the word influential, but basically this person, I think once a day or once a week or whatever, a thought or idea or something occurs to him. He whips out his phone, he hits record, he records something for 20-30 minutes, whatever it takes. When he finishes it, he goes to YouTube, he uploads it directly from his phone, no thumbnail. I think he puts in a little title. I don't even know if the guy puts in a description, and he's posted, and the guy's highly successful from it. So yeah, here we are. It's probably going to be noisy. I'll see if I can sort of get rid of that. Probably not. I need a microphone. But yeah, I created all these barriers of entry and hurdles, and then I thought, I'm just being ridiculous. Why don't I whip out my old ass iPhone 12, hit record something and post it. So this week I I decided to do just that. Is it perfect? No. Is it a little embarrassing? Yeah. I think all people on earth, I have a perception of what my voice sounds like, and when I hear it recorded, I'm like, that's not me. I know there's a term for it. That's the one thing. The other thing is, I'll make a video, I'll record it, I'll edit it, and then I'm like, shit, I forgot to mention this. Oh man, this would have been more useful. I could have worded that differently. But I thought, let me just do it, and I had to do it quickly. So my plan was post like 1, 2, 3 minute videos. I gotta think about it, set it up, record it, edit it, create the text for a post, and post it in like under 20 minutes. Yesterday was a disaster for audio, so it took me an hour, which I'm frustrated about. But I'd rather get the information out there. It might not be as polished as a lot of the people that I follow and enjoy, but I think I saw a Alex Omo's video the other day where I think he started he started recording in a closet or something, or maybe I think that was maybe Diary of a CEO. And like, if that's good enough and people like the stuff, it obviously got exceptionally better, exponentially better over time. But just start somewhere. Get over the hurdle of imposter syndrome, which is a big thing for me. I'm proud, I'm confident, but yeah, I'm my own worst critic. And just get it out there. I don't know if I'm going to clear this, but there's it's the movie, one of my favorites, Dumb Money, which is about the Wall Street bets whole thing with deep fucking value and maybe he had another name, Kitten something. Anyway, it's like his character, his brother says to him, you know, just run with your dick out, you know, let the lightning hit your dick. So that's what I'm doing. So what can we talk about today? There's a lot of things. I made this video yesterday about getting to a dangerous intersection. If I had music on, I'd be turning it down, because that somehow helps me take intersection. I'm at a very dangerous intersection here on the West Coast Road. So let me just focus on this. One for you, one for us, yes? Check. I'm gonna go. We're good. Fun fact, I got my driving license 2 months ago, my South African driving license. I had a British one before that. I rode on it for very long, so I wasn't supposed to. Still a valid license, but in South Africa they're a bit funny about it. I always go through checkpoints, which is not an issue. But I decided once again, something I put off for 3 years, just make sure I'm recording, get my South African driving license, because I know my wife worries about it. So yeah, as I was saying, I recorded this video yesterday about resumes. And I was chatting to a friend of mine, Andy Gill, Zephyr Fish, shout out. And I said to him, the challenge I have is, and it sounds crazy, but I could talk about resumes for, gosh man, I could talk about it for 2-3 hours. There's so much to think about and consider. Now, keep it simple, stupid. KISS is always the name of the game. But there's a lot that we can get into related to resumes. And maybe that's the subject. Maybe that's where we start. You know, it typically is the start of your job hunting journey. And I guess the first key point there is, I typically tell people to open up their resume every 4, 8, 12. No, 3, 6, 9, 12. Every 3 months, so every quarter. So it doesn't matter if you own a business. I own a business. I've been owning a business for the last 8 years, which we can get into another day. But I still work on my resume every few months. I tweak it, I update it, I like add something there, I take it away, so that if the Dusty hits the fan, then I'm ready to rock. the amount of people, or the amount of layoffs that are happening now, especially in America, but it's starting to happen here in South Africa. In South Africa, we don't call it layoffs really. We call it retrenchments, which I think sounds a lot worse. But the worst time to prepare your resume is when you're in the shit. So you've just been laid off, just been fired, company worked for, liquidated, whatever it is. You are in like a fragile state. You're in an uncertain state. You're in like a bit of a fight or flight scenario. So it is the worst time to work on your resume. Now, imagine this. You work on your resume every 3 months. You can open it for every 3 months, look at it for 20 minutes, read through it, and go, yeah, we're good to go. I'm not going to change a damn thing. But imagine you've done that for the last year or two while you're working in your job, and suddenly today you got the news that you're getting laid off. Oh, this is bad. Sorry. Yeah. My brother-in-law, who drives big trucks in America and farms, taught me never go past a big truck unless you can get a lot of gap. But anyway. So, imagine you had worked on prepare your resume this whole time, right? And suddenly you got laid off and you go, oh my gosh, doom and gloom, I've been laid off. The first thing on your mind is, I need to get another job. I need to replace my income. Now, if you hadn't touched your resume and suddenly you feel if your resume was old, you needed like a complete overhaul, you redo your resume. I can do a resume in like 2 hours from nothing. But for other people that don't do recruiting day in and day out, it can take them a week, and there's uncertainty and doubt, and you end up spending so much time just looking at figuring out the right template. Sorry, IRL moment. The reason there's such a traffic jam on the West Coast Road is because the Buffelsfontein giraffes are on the road, and when that happens, people go a little bit crazy. And it's a long weekend. I forgot about that. So yeah, okay. I'm gonna be late as hell, but it's fine. So yeah, you did all that prep. Now you're at a job. You go, oh damn, I lost my job. I need to get a new job. The first thing you need to get a new job is have a resume ready. Now, if you work in tech and cybersecurity, and I'm sure some other industries, when there's a public layoff, everybody hears about it at the same time. And all they're going to want to do is help those people that are near and dear to them, friends, ex-colleagues, even strangers. And you've got to be ready to pull the trigger immediately. When you get that layoff news, you go, oh damn. You get your resume, which you've worked on 2 months, you open it, you double check it, sharp, we're cool. You can immediately send your resume. You're already going to get ahead of everybody else that's looking for a job. And if you look at like in the US last year in tech, and it was a bloodbath. So that's my first thing. Every 3 months, open your resume, look at it, make sure everything is honky-dory, make sure everything is up to date, and then you're always ready to go. The next thing I would say is, and this is according to me, this is all just my opinion and my opinion alone. It's much easier to make a long resume, get all the informations in there, and then trim it down. The case in point, when I worked on my resume last, I put it all in there. And I've had an interesting career. I was in the British Airborne for just shy of 6 years. I did 2 tours of Afghan. I did OTX in Kenya. I was a Lance Corporal. Promoting is very slow in the UK, but also maybe I wasn't exactly the most exceptional soldier that ever existed. I did private military contracting. I worked as a bodyguard in Iraq. I worked offshore anti-piracy. I worked on a mine. I did all sorts of stuff. So I get it all out. I think I did it in 4 pages. So then I went, okay, I'm going to whittle this down from 4 pages to 3. And then my 3-pager was done. And then I was like, okay, I am not going to dare cold send this to a soul, right? The rule of thumb is 1 page is great, 2 pages is fine, 3 pages, I think once I said is North Korea, right? So I have my 3-pager as like a backup, and I'll explain how that works. Then I need to whittle down my 3-pager into a 2-pager. Typically, when you're applying for a job, you want to go with a 2-pager. It is almost what's expected. Now, I saw today on LinkedIn, someone's like, "Oh, but I've got so much experience. How am I supposed to fit this on 2 pages?" It's easy. You do not need to include every single solitary little minute tool, technology, information, responsibilities, duties, accomplishments, right? Your resume has one job and one job alone, according to me. A resume gets you an interview. That's it. An interview and tech and cybersecurity, an interview and a tech test gets you a job. So you'll whittle down that 3-pager into a 2-pager. Now, there's some tips you can use there. I did my resume on Canva because I've become pretty good at Canva. I really like Canva. Is it great for ATSs? Probably not. But I'm not really applying for open jobs. If I was applying for jobs, which I have in the past, explore the market, see what's out there. Maybe get out of talent acquisition. I would send my resume there. So then the ATS becomes less relevant. So some tips I use is if you're doing it on Word or Google Docs. So Word is much easier. You click on the top, you click on layer, and you go to margins, and you change your margins to narrow. Now, normal margins are typically based on the space or whatever where a printer could print. But ain't nobody, you need to slow down, ma'am. Thank you. Third road rage incident of the day. Sorry, you go to layout, you go to margin, you change it to narrow. It makes the space between the edge of the page, an A4 page, I only learned recently America uses different sizes. A4 is king. It makes the space between the edge of the page and where anything that would be printed would start at like 1/2 centimeter. In American, that's like, I don't know, man. It's like 1/2 inch, 1/3 of an inch, 3/16. or I don't know. I'm not clued up on that. So you got a bit more real estate to work with. The next thing, your summary. If you are unsure how long your summary should be, look up the definition of the word summary. It's like a, and again paraphrasing, it's a short bite-size like paragraph. If your summary is anything longer than like 4 sentences, it's not a summary, right? I've had people that have a thing on their resume and they say summary and it's a page long, and I'm like, this isn't a summary, this is a covering letter. So keep your summary short. Now with a summary, I typically say there's 4 to 5 things you put in your summary, and I'll say this has nothing to do with geography, right? But you want to talk about where you came from, where you are going, and what are you doing now to get you where you want to go. And the 5th thing you can add is maybe something interesting. How they might look is I am such and such. I served in the British military. Currently I am a senior SOC analyst. I hope to one day become a SEAM engineer or a CISO, and to achieve that I'm currently studying my CISO exam, right? Interesting fact about me, I've got 2 gold medals for tug of war. Not Olympic, it's like unit level for me, but anyway, something interesting or funny. Yo, people are in a rush. That's fine, as my dad always say, rush, fly, rush, die. So that's your summary. Now, another little tip on top of that summary is we can all see it's a summary. So you don't have to label it. You don't have to label a summary. When you add that title on that section. Summary. You're taking up 2 lines, maybe 3, because if you have spacing before and after, it's 3 lines. You can see it's a summary. Leave it like that. The same goes for your PII, and we're going to talk about PII next. But we all recognize what a phone number looks like. We all recognize what an email address looks like. You don't need to label it as such. Now, some people might say, oh, but then it's not going to sync up with an ATS. My rebuttal to that is, typically with a good recruiting company or a good recruiter or the hiring managers or HR, whatever, typically if you apply for a job using their ATS, the applicant tracking system, you'll upload your resume. It'll then automatically pass. It'll extract the data that it needs. It'll formulate it in a certain way, depending on what ATS. Some will look good, some will look bad. And it will scrape a phone number and recognize it a phone number. It will scrape an email address and recognize the email and location. However, if it doesn't, it's fine. They will literally, because they need an email, because they need to contact you, and they need your phone number, they might want your phone number, the candidate will just add it in manually, or you'll add it in manually. So just put, there's a bunch of different ways. I used to use like a table with your name on the left and your PII on the right. Nowadays, I'd use pipes in between the information. You don't need to label that. Now, seeing as we mentioned PII, we can talk about PII. And I made a short video about that yesterday. This is more a South African thing, but there's variants of this across the world. Bear in mind, I've recruited in America, South Africa, Nigeria, the UK, Germany, Poland, other bits in the EU. I've recruited in Australia and New Zealand. I've just never touched Asia. I dabbled in the UAE for like a month, but yeah, that wasn't my scene. South Africans especially tend to include all the PII. To the extent that they have their name, yes, great. The last name, sure. Email address, phone number, all the usuals. Then they'll have their address. But instead of saying Cape Town, South Africa, Joburg, Gauteng, Harare, Zimbabwe, London, UK, they will put their entire physical address in their resume. Now, in most jobs, that's not going to mean much. But in security, some people might look at that and go, this is really bad OPSEC. Operational security or PERSEC, whichever way you take your T. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good if you're a security person, right? They just want to know where you are, roughly. The next thing some South Africans will add is their, and I used to have this on my CV way back when, they'll have their marital status. They'll have, fitness, good. They'll have their ID number. They will have, children, yes. How many? 3. Marriages, 2. Blood type, driving license, code of license. Like I've seen South African CVs with a page with a PII. Now, before you as the individual are important to a potential hiring manager or recruiter, you first got to sell them on your wares. You got to sell them on like why you're applicable to this job. Afterwards, they'll get to know you, get to know your name, and oh, you're married, oh, you're divorced, sorry about that. Oh, you have kids, great, hold it. No one cares about that. You're a blank canvas. They just want to know, can you do what we need you to do at an efficient level? So the minimum PII I suggest is obviously your full name. If you're Portuguese, some Portuguese people will make it shorter because most Portuguese people have like 4 names. Fun fact, I remember I had a friend who set up a Facebook in a certain region in a country that it was very normal for people just to have one single name, like Charles. No surname, no nothing. So yeah, you put your full name in, put your email address in, and put your like location in, right? If you're looking to move to a different area, I would put that in. We said phone number, name, email address, critical, location, also important, phone number. I strongly suggest. I'm not a cold calling guy. People cold call. Put your phone number in, right? You don't have to. People can always email you, and then you can give them your phone number. It's however you take your tea. Some additional things you can add is your LinkedIn URL. Now, there's a pro tip on that. You can go on LinkedIn and you can edit your public. You can edit your public LinkedIn URL. So now it'll be like your first name dash last name, and then a bunch of random numbers, like your profile ID. You can change it to something short. So remember I mentioned Andy Gill earlier. Before I knew him and met him through a community called the Many Hats Club, RIP, his LinkedIn URL used to be F off recruiters. And then I still had the nuts to message him. Anyway, you can shorten your LinkedIn URL, and then you can just add a hyperlink to your LinkedIn. If you work in tech, a GitHub is great. If you have a blog, share that. If you've got not really anything going on there, maybe don't share it. Now, in South Africa, there's obviously black economic empowerment and different laws that regulate how companies must hire and whatnot. And it is important here. But typically when you apply for a job on the ATS, they'll have it set up so you can select your race. Yes, it's a thing in South Africa. It's all good. But even if they don't, they're going to realize that when they do an interview with you, firstly. And secondly, and I'm not assuming here, but when they're looking to make you an offer, they'll typically make you a contingent offer based on certain things. So then they will do a background check on you. When they do a background check on you, they'll get your ID and a copy of your ID. They'll probably get some more, ask for your bank statements to do financial background checks, fraud checks. So then all this information, for your medical aid, they'll ask you, are you married? Do you have dependents? Yada, yada, yada. So all the information still comes out, but it's not a distraction in your candidacy when you apply for a job. So yeah, and I think that covers PRI. The next thing, now, I think what I'll talk about is this, I maybe am a bit of a rule breaker like this, freaking the sheets, they say, the Excel sheets. I typically like a small font. Now, my standard text, I will typically do font 9, and I don't use Comic Sans. I like Railway, but it's not very popular. There's some really cool fonts out there. Just don't do Times New Roman. Yes, it was one of the easiest to read fonts that existed, but it looks hella old school now. So I don't like things that are too big. I think the biggest thing that needs to be in your resume is your name, and not ridiculously big. So I typically do my text 9, and then everything above that 10, and everything above that 12. So like section title will be 12, maybe 13, right? And don't be scared to use color. Don't go overboard with it though. I typically avoid fancy emojis and emoticons and all that stuff. It looks silly, right? If you're gonna use a bullet type thing, don't use the little arrows. Just use the little dots. There's a fat dot and a thin dot. Just use the thin dot, right? Yo, Fury Road. We're about to have our 4th road rage incident. Come on, you can do it. Come on. Sorry. This is going well so far. Right. The next thing is the order of your resume. Now, in South Africa, we were taught to do resumes in school. Not great advice. But in security, where I specialize in, it's typically 4 to 5 things that sell you. Now, selling people, that's a dangerous subject. That's what we're talking about. I call it selling people, but it's your candidacy and your marketability, right? The first half of page 1 of your resume is the most critical part of your entire resume. It is like when you go look on a property website, Property 24 or Rightmove in the UK or whatnot. No one is trying to sell their house and putting a picture of the toilet on the front page. The preview thumbnail. No one's putting a picture of the shed. It is the front of house, because that's typically what sells best. The resume is exactly the same. That first half of page 1 of your resume is critical. You need to have enough in there in a structured manner that not someone goes, oh my gosh, this person's perfect for this role. They go, this person could work, because then they're moving on. But you've made that first sift, right? So in security, there's 4 to 5 things that sell you: your experience, your certifications, your education, and what you do in the security community. Now, if you're doing nothing in the security community, it's fine. That's fine. Some of us do more, some of us do less. No shame. Doesn't matter. Does it help? Sure it does. If anything, it's a talking point, and it creates like the person looking at your resume likes B-sides, for example. They're gonna see that and go, oh, this person thinks a little bit like me, and it can become a talking point. How you order your resume depends on what sells you best. Let's look at me, Charles. I don't have a degree. I'd like to study a degree, even though I'm in my late 30s, slowly. I have matric, and I've got a BTech level 3 in like bodyguarding, and I've got some super useless certifications in the army. I've got a bunch of, like, my education, and that's it. Let's call it high school. Certifications, I've got a bunch of certifications when it comes to physical security. I'm a ship security officer, port facility security officer, company security officer. I've got my STC W95, which is probably way expired. I've got a Siemens book. I've got it all, right? Cybersecurity, I've got NSE 1, 2, and 3, and I think I've got 2 other certs, which are of no value. I think I did NSE 1, 2, and 3 while watching Netflix one day. So I don't have anything super relevant there. My experience then next is where I can make a difference. But the thing that sells me best, resume gets you an interview gets you a job. The thing that's going to get me an interview is what I do in the community. Now, you can do a ton in the community and have no relevance in the background, and you might not get a conversation, but there's a strong likelihood you might. I've placed people and got interviews with people purely based on what they did in the community. So that's how I structure my resume. So yes, I've got some other stuff there. I've got like an expertise section, and I don't even know if I have a summary anymore. But yeah, I've got my security community stuff, then my experience, then my certifications, then my education. Let's just see if the cops stop me. Maybe, yes, no. I'm legal though. I'm legal. Right. So I need to wrap this up. Almost there. I'm picking up my daughter, so we might do this every 1 to 2 weeks. The next thing. Now let's talk about your work experience, right? So what I typically like to do is I like to get the job title, the company you work for, and the dates you work there all on the same line, right? All on the same line. And how I structure that typically is, unless you work for some extremely big household name, I would put the company you work for first, followed by your job title. The reason I do that is if you've had a bit of a long career, right? Everything you've done is relevant, but the things you've done more recently are the most relevant. So what typically happens is the most recent job you've had, let's be ambitious. You give it 10 bullet points. The job before that, you're probably going to drop down to like 6, maybe 8 at the most. Before that, maybe 4. Before that, maybe 2. But when you start getting around the 2 mark, it's pointless in having the bullets. So what happens then is, on my resume, my 2-pager, I've got all my previous jobs. So the company I work for, my title, the company I work for, and the dates. 3-letter month, 4-number year, dash, 3-letter month, 4-letter year. When I start looking like 10, 12 years back, it's like super irrelevant to some extent, right? So I have all those things in one line. So it's still there, it still has relevance, it's still there to be a talking point. And it sucks. Like me, I served 6 in the military. I'm super proud of that. But if you look at my resume now, it is literally one line on my resume. That's it. Remember, military service is a chapter, it's not the whole book. So that's a useful tip. A thing I always try to avoid, and I do use these, but I tend to avoid them as much as I can. I use them very selectively, is do not use tables. Tables are fine when you set up the first time, but when you need to edit that document again and you can't find the table and you forget about it, it becomes a disaster. Sometimes where I'll use a table is I'll insert the table that is 2 rows and 2 columns, 5 rows, columns, whichever way. And the middle line I'll move far to the left, and on the left I'll put subject matter. So let's say you're a security analyst, done a bit of pen testing, done a bit of SOC, done a bit of this, done a bit of that. You'll put on the left, you'll put in bold pen testing, or SOC below that, operating systems, coding languages, whatever. And on the right of that, you'll just comma separate all the things that you've done related to that. No context. So what is the rule of thumb when it comes to pen testers? You'll see Kali Linux, you might see Arch Linux, maybe see Justin Bieber Linux. You'll see Metasploit, you'll see Nmap, you'll see Durbuster, you'll see stuff like that. Now this is now not cheating the system. You're not cheating the system, but this is gonna flag on an ATS. A recruiter that doesn't know what they're looking at are gonna be looking for super duper. They're gonna be looking for keywords because they don't actually know what they're looking at. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. So you're spoon feeding that information. That's typically the only place I would use a table. And then once the table's done and I've got the center line as far left as I can without making the wrap text thing happen on the left, I then select the whole table. I make sure there's very little the space in between the text and the, anyway, I'll reduce it as much as I can, and then I'll hide the lines. So I'll make the lines of the table white. So if your resume's background is white, so that's that. Now, when it comes to the bullets you put in your experience, some people will like, if you work for Woolworths, right? You don't have to explain who Woolworths is. We all know who Woolworths is, let's be honest. Some people will explain who the company is, but typically that's not needed. Then they'll like talk about the responsibilities and they break it down into like chunks. And very rarely that's going to be helpful. You just want to get like 8 to 10 bullet points of your most recent job, and remember that stuff you put in the tech table, you want to include that in those bullets again, but now you're including them in the context of the job you did. Speaking to a friend of mine earlier, Antoinette van der Westhuys, and she started an HR company, employer of record. I worked with her, she was one of my first clients. What was she saying? She was saying, what are we talking about? ADHD. We were talking about tech tables. Antoinette, tech tables. Think. I'm about to arrive, so what I might do is I'll quickly pick up my daughter. I'll watch the last 2 minutes and then I'll report back. All right, I picked up the kid.
Hola.
We'll go unnamed. So we are on a return leg home. So we were talking about, I've lost my train of thought. We were talking about a tech table and then the bullets within your experience. So what I forgot, which I now remembered, is that the tech table, right, is there to spoon feed an ATS and a recruiter. They're looking for the keywords that they need related to the job opportunity that they have, right? And then you're mentioning it. You want to mention it again in your bullet points and your experience. Now, why is that? Now, if you intersection. If you work for a big brand, if you're in America and you work for a FANG company, in South Africa you work for one of the big brands, MTN, Woolworths, NGen, whoever. You work for a small little, and there's no harm in it, you work for a small mom and pop consulting shop, right? The relevance of you being a pen tester at that mom and pop shop versus being a senior pen tester at Woolworths, it's a stark difference. So that's why when I see people on their resume, they talk about their job and what they did and what not, but they don't include a lot of the technical information in there. And what recruiter wants to see your hiring manager want to see the context of that tool or that language or that doing that you've done in the context of the job that you had at the time. That's why it's important. So yes, you're repeating yourself, but at the top it's like it's spoon feeding, and at the bottom it's giving that context. Context is king when it comes to your experience. The other thing I do, ChatGPT is really good with it, but be careful, is start your bullets. I thought they're called mission verbs, but maybe they're just plain verbs. Mission verbs is a military term, like demonstrate, execute, deliver, whatever. So let's just call them verbs, right? Start your sentences with verbs. Maybe don't overdo it, but use those kind of things, because immediately someone's going to think, they're going to have a positive bias towards you, and they're going to think this person is a doer. They're executed this, that, and the other, saving the company 20%. Automated this process, which typically took this long, now it takes this long. I think that's usually a good way to go. Now, a small little tip in that, in your sentence structure, is if you have a sentence and it wraps over into the next line, if it wraps over by only one word, try find a word that you can get rid of. Or, and it sounds really counterintuitive, make it a bit longer. It almost feels like such a waste to lose a single line in your resume for just one word. So find a word you can shorten, maybe look at your sentence and see if there's something you can adjust there. But what's next? What's next, miss?
Okay.
Document format.
Yes, document format.
Okay, yes, document format. So document formatting. So let's say you've finished your resume, and when you send your resume to a company, what I typically do, and I said I would mention this later, is you typically are going to apply with your 2-page resume. Now, when you see a buddy has posted a job, right? And maybe they're a very busy person, maybe they're very high up, very senior. They don't really have time to go schmooze your resume, give it a kind perusal, as my father would say. In those quick instances, I will use my 1-pager. And when I send that 1-pager, I say, hey, I've got a more standard resume, 2-pager. If you want it, let me know. If your boss wants it, let me know. When I apply for a job, I will use my 2-pager. And when I submit that 2-pager, if I'm submitting my resume by email, I will always say, here's my resume, if you can't perusal or check it out. I will always mention in there and say, hey, I do have a longer, more detailed resume. If you want that, let me know. When I send my resume, it'll always be in PDF. Now, some recruiters, including me, might ask you to send us a Word version. The only reason I personally ask for a Word version sometimes is if your resume, and it's not always the case, but if your resume doesn't look great and it needs some tweaking, it needs some editing, I'll ask for a Word document. Instead of telling you what to change, I'll just do it myself. I'll send you a copy of it, Word and PDF, and then you have it yourself. So that's it. So when you apply for a job, just use PDF. Now, one thing you don't want to do is attach a covering letter to that document, or after your resume, you start adding your certifications and your matric certificate and all this. If someone wants a document related to you, they will ask for it. Unless it explicitly states it in the job, which I think happens a lot in physical security, just in your 2-pager. Right, we're back on the road after a quick pit stop. Right, so the next thing. If there was one thing you took from all of this, it would be this. Indeed is a great place to find jobs, find opportunities, and apply. But do yourself a favor. Never, ever, ever use an Indeed template. It is the most inefficient resume that exists. Maybe they've updated recently, but when I post jobs, and sometimes I go on Indeed as a free job board, and I get applications, 99 times out of 100, I'll open the resume and I'll go, oh, Indeed resume. And unless there's something there that stands out to me, I'm moving on. And most recruiters would as well. It is okay to use Indeed to find a job. It's a great place to find jobs, but then use the resume that you created. The other thing that's in the same line is, once again, we spoke earlier about make sure you check your resume every 3 months. On LinkedIn, there's a feature where you can download your profile as like a structured resume PDF, right? Now, it's great, but LinkedIn is the place where you can go into a lot more detail. You can tag companies. People can have their brands on there that's recognizable, you know, your causes and your communities and whatnot. But unless you have a super good, super sharp LinkedIn profile, do not apply for a job with that downloadable LinkedIn resume. It screams lazy. And, you know, you might say, okay, but Charlie, everything that's on my LinkedIn is on my resume and vice versa. Sure, I hear you. It doesn't work, especially, I think, personally, in security. Now, where LinkedIn is useful, and why we add a LinkedIn URL to our resume, is that a lot of times, if you've got a decent resume or okay resume or a bad resume, if I see something there that interests me, I will click on your LinkedIn. And I actually have a separate, I've got 3 screens. My one screen is vertical. And it's not for writing code, because the Lord knows I can't write code. I can see almost an entire profile on a single screen. Now, I will open your LinkedIn profile while I look at your resume. The reason I do that is all LinkedIn profiles are structured in roughly the same way. So I know where everything is. I know what to expect. So I will use that. I will use LinkedIn for that. So just seeing everything the way it's structured. If you have a really bad resume, LinkedIn might be able to save you. Now, a little thing I do there as well is I'll make sure the dates on your LinkedIn, the jobs in between your jobs, matches your resume. If it doesn't, it's a red flag. Now, you know, say now you lost your job and you were out of work for 3-4 months and then you got a new job. And I account for this. If you made your dates on your LinkedIn sync up. So say you lost your job in June, but your next job you only started was in November. If you then set your previous job on LinkedIn to have finished in October, that's fine. I'm going to account for that. But if it's way off, which happens sometimes, it's a red flag, and it starts creating questions in an interview that is just not going to work out well. Or it's an uncomfortable thing to have to do. Next up, covering letters. Right, covering letters. This is a good one. Now, tackle this. My thought process in it might not be industry standard, but hear me out. This is my thought process. That's what I base this on the 9 years I've worked in recruiting in tech and cybersecurity. Do not put a covering letter on the front of your resume. If you are applying for a job through an ATS or a job board or whatever, sometimes it'll ask you for a covering letter, and some companies like it. Other companies couldn't care less, right? If you are emailing your application to someone's email address, what I would typically do then is in the email body, I will structure that in a way that it could be like a covering letter, but never attach it in the same document as your resume. What you put in a covering letter, I don't feel like I'm an expert in this. ChatGPT is very useful at the stuff. Remember, as Dominic White would say, generative AI is a tool. It's an input, not an output solution. And I take that with a massive grain of salt. I'm very naughty with that, but so be it. A covering letter doesn't necessarily need to repeat everything that's in your resume. A covering letter, in my opinion, is like a long summary. It's giving them a feel for who you are, your motivations, what you excel, what you do best, and what you want to do. Now, to have a good covering letter, I think the only advice I can give you is make sure the covering letter is applicable to you and your resume, but make sure it's applicable to the job more than anything. if you can spoon feed to someone why you and your experience, your skill set, background, certifications, education is applicable to their job, right? You can have a high likelihood of an interview. Remember, interviews get you jobs. So that is pretty much all I can say about covering letters. Do I use covering letters? No, I don't think I've ever used a covering letter. I'll put some information in the email body and I'll send it off. The next thing I want to cover is references. Now, some people, and it's very common in South Africa, people will put references at the bottom of their resume. So what I mean by that is they'll put a name, maybe they'll put the company that this person is relevant to, their title, put their phone number and email address in there. An industry standard I have seen that this is a big no. There might be some countries where this is normal and accepted and almost expected, but I typically suggest not doing that. And I'll give you an idea of what you can do instead. But typically what you want to do is you'll have a section title that'll say references, and then under that you just say references on request. Now, why do we do this? Well, it's very simple. You worked for a company in the past, right? And you got on very well with your boss. You thought you got on well with your boss. You thought he was great. You thought he would say all sorts of nice things about you. But they get your job application, and before they interview you, they go, you know what, let me call this reference. Now, if that reference is someone where you work at the moment, it might create an awkward conversation between you, your boss, and HR. There's nothing wrong with you looking for a job while having a job. But you need to try control the narrative. So what I suggest is you send your resume, you don't put your references, you just put that references on request. When the company decides they want to make an offer to you, which is usually, like I said before, contingent, they're going to ask you for your references, and then you spoon feed them the references. So maybe if you got two that you know are 100%, you can send those two. But if there's one that you're like, I'm not sure if this person's going to say something good about me, right? You hold off on that one. So if the two references go out and they come back and they say, no, these are really great, all good, we need one more, and you send another one, and then suddenly they reject you, or they say, we said we need three, but we actually want one more. You know then, and it's not always the case, but it's the common case, is you need to then realize that you should never use that third reference ever again. It's happened to me before, where a company was quite spiteful of someone leaving. We send their references, and then the client asked me for two more. And because I had a very good relationship with the client, I asked why. And they said, no, one of these references didn't say very good things, but it sounded like there was malice there. So by doing it in the way I'm suggesting, you maintain the narrative, you maintain the QA. What's also important to do is before you send a company your references, before you send that phone number and before you send that email address, check in with that reference. Hey bud, how's it going? Great. Listen, I'm interviewing with Spur. What a job. Imagine working for Spur, right? I would like to put you down as a reference for this job. Would that be cool? You're sure going to say good things. They say sharp, it's good, you can carry on. But a lot of times, the email addresses you have people will be work related. And if they no longer work at that company, that email's going to bounce. Starts creating an awkward conversation. It becomes a hurdle in the process to get you hired. So check in with your references, and then when they confirm, you can send them on. Now, a pro tip there with references, and it's something I did with my resume, and it's why I realized this morning I should probably update my resume, is I have LinkedIn recommendations. When I did my resume last, I had 36 or 38, something like that, right? Now I have, I think, 56. I'm still waiting on a few recommendations from people, so please do check out your DMs. On LinkedIn, you can basically ask people for recommendations, and it is, I think, of more value than potentially a reference check. It's a narrative type response, and it's just text. When you send a recommendation to someone, you can, and what I suggest is when you send that recommendation to the person, you kind of tell them what you want them to say. I never give them the content, because then I also feel like it's a cheat. But I'll say, hey, can you focus on my technical knowledge of cybersecurity? And if you felt my communication was good, my communication. Now, you can get as many recommendations as you want. I don't even know if there's a limit. I know people with 200, 400 recommendations. But as soon as you have like 2 or 3 that are like paragraph long, your LinkedIn profile will like not archive them, but it'll go into like a separate page. So what will happen is when you get to recommendations, it'll show the top 2, and then it'll show all or show more. When you click on that, it creates a new hyperlink, right? Or a new URL. It goes to a new page. And on that page, all you will see is your recommendations. It has a profile picture of the person that wrote it. I think it shows a relationship to them and where they currently work. And then the narrative. Now, take that URL and go to your resume, and where you said references, a reference on request, you leave it like that, and then you add one more sentence that said, you say something like, in the meantime, you can check out my insert number, LinkedIn recommendations here. And where it says here, you just hyperlink it, make it bold, and you replace that, in that hyperlink, you add the URL onto the text. So if someone wants to get a quick snapshot of who you are, and they want to speak to references, but you haven't included it, you're giving them another avenue to check who you are. Now, I have managed to land clients purely based on telling a company like, hey, if you don't believe I'm the best at this, go check my recommendations. Another thing I'll add in the recommendations is you can turn them on or off, i.e. to show certain ones or turn them off. And you can also change the order of them. Typically put your hardest hitting, most relevant, most recent recommendations above others. Okay.
How many more do you want to add?
No, it's just those 2. It's just those 2. Okay, so hey?
No, I asked.
Haley Roth.
What?
Look at this. I said this was going to happen. Look at the damn wall. What happened?
It broke.
It totally collapsed. Or they broke it themselves. No, the thing is empty.
Oh.
It collapsed. You could see that wasn't done right. Okay, let me start. All right, we're almost home, so we need to get done. One thing you should never do with your resume, once again, my suggestion, is some people upload their resume to LinkedIn. Now, intuition will tell you this is a good idea, but let me tell you why I think it's not. Due to how LinkedIn formatting works and how it presents certain information and data, it'll open your resume in a really, really small window. It also means you don't have control of who gets it. Now, you're already putting this information out publicly on LinkedIn, so you know what's a home in your resume, but your resume tends to have a bit more sensitive information in it, and you don't know if someone's looked at it or not. So rather keep your resume to yourself and use it to apply for a job or use it to email someone. Another thing, and I touched on this earlier, but I want to make it more of a point, is stick to the basics in your resume. So when I put dates into a resume, or when I format someone's resume or do a review, you want to make it as easy to read as possible. You almost want to, when someone opens your resume, they immediately need to understand, oh, the sections are broken up this way, here's their personal information, there's the dates. Because one of the first things a recruiter is going to do after they realize your resume is worth looking at more is they're going to do some maths related to your tenure and what you did at companies, so how long you were there. And if you're a short stinter, you're going to have problems. If the dates don't match up, it's another problem. So that's why I'm a big fan of tab. I will tab my dates out, all my dates, and all my dates are structured in roughly the same way. If there's a month involved, if the month is important, like it is with experience, 3-letter month, 4-number year, dash 3-letter month, 4-number year. If it's a certification, I will put in the date you did it and just the year in bold. And if you look at my resume, any resume edit, all the dates will be nicely aligned as far right as possible. When it comes to bullets, once again, just use dot bullets. Don't use numbering. Don't use the little arrows. Don't use ticks. Don't use boxes. I don't know, aesthetically, it doesn't work. When it comes to adding color, I think use color. I use red and blue on my resume because, you know, cybersecurity. But what I found out, I think last year, someone told me red is the most common non-seen color by colorblind people. And I heard that and I was like, but I really like the red, so I think I'm going to leave the red. Don't go overboard with the color, but keep it simple. The other important thing, and this is a question, it's usually one of the first questions I get when it comes to resumes. People say, Charlie, do I add a picture? Now, what I've realized whilst working more in Europe is, I think in countries like Germany and I think the Netherlands, it's almost expected to have like a professional picture on your resume. Thanks to generative AI, there's a lot of easy ways you can take a picture of you and like a non-professional picture of yourself and make it look professional. It still looks like you, but it's you in a suit or you in a professional outfit. I personally don't have a picture in my resume. A, it's on LinkedIn, you can look at it there. And B, it's you want to reduce the amount of things people can judge you on. And even though we live in a society where a lot of people are, everything is free and fair and anything goes and equal opportunities and everything, people have unconscious bias. And myself included. I once helped someone with a resume and they had a picture on their resume and they looked like the meanest person on earth. They didn't look like someone that I wanted to have a conversation with. They looked like someone that's going to give me problems. And I said to him, I was like, have you ever looked at this picture and thought about what that looks like to the outside world? And the guy looked at it and he goes, I don't know, I don't look very friendly, do I? I was like, exactly, you don't look welcoming. So unless it's an SOP where you live, I strongly suggest never ever putting a picture in your resume. Right, I think that covers it. There's probably other things that could have been important, which I haven't thought about, which me and the miss will make notes of at another time.
Yeah.
And we'll add, maybe make a subsequent video. This is just the first. We can always redo this someday in a more professional manner, in a studio or somewhere in the house and all that stuff. But I think the content is important here. If you have any questions about resumes, please do drop me a message. I'll figure out a way that you can contact me. LinkedIn is usually the best. I'm still on X. I'm on Sky Blue. I think I'm on Reddit. Yeah, I'm on Reddit as well.
And also, don't forget to like the video and like and subscribe.
Oh, yes, please. Oh, jeez. Go, sorry. Road rage incident number 5. They've got a massive ditch in the road and they're not warning people. So I almost got a puncture earlier. But yeah, that's it. Please like and subscribe and share it with someone. If you have any feedback, do let me know. If you have any not nice feedback, keep it to yourself.
No.
As we say, resumes are in the eye of the beholder, and I don't need to be beholden to you. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you later.